This is Toledo's Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. Joining me today in the studio are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar, also the TSO music director, Alain Trudel, and our director of marketing, Vanessa Gardner. Welcome, all three of you.
Hello.
Nice to have you. We actually have had you in the studio for 2 weeks in a row, Elaine. It's wonderful to have you here. We're talking today about this program, which is called Passion and Intrigue, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about two very important German composers, right, of the 19th century and into the 20th century. That would be Richard Wagner as well as Richard Strauss. You've also got music of Samuel Coleridge-Taylor on here, which is an interesting piece that is great for full orchestra. It's a wonderful program. We'll talk about that a little bit. But first of all, let's get a little bit of an overview. Why these three composers in this particular program?
Well, we wanted to, first of all, it started with, we had some Wagner on the program because we were paying homage to some very special people, and Zach will talk a bit more about that later on. And Wagner, we wanted to present, we always think of Wagner as an epic composer, but he also has these wonderful moments of tenderness in his music and intimacy. And we wanted to focus on that also. So we start with Siegfried Idel, or Idel, I think in English.
Yeah.
And the bookend of the program, the other bookend, are the Wesendonck-Lieder, which are the leaders that he wrote for the Wesendonck, the family, but, he was having an affair with
Matilda Wesendonck.
Yeah, anyway, complicated. All those things in the Romantic era is very complicated and very messy.
Well, Wagner had a habit, though, of getting cozy with the guy and then stealing his wife.
Cozy? I would even say Cosima.
Very good.
For those who don't know, that was the name of his wife, who used to be the wife of Hans Bülow, who was the conductor, who was the person who was championing Wagner's music. How bad is that?
Yeah. Cosima was also the daughter of Franz Liszt.
Exactly.
So there's a whole incestuous thing going on there, music incestuous.
But let's put that aside.
Good choice.
And let's just talk about.
I mean, he certainly could.
Yeah.
And you can hear in those two works. It's interesting because it has the Siegfried. It has. Siegfried was his son, their son, and he wrote this as a gift to Cosima after he gave birth and around her birthday, which was around Christmas time. And he had all the musicians inside his house. So that's why it's not a piece for huge orchestra. They were everywhere. And the conductor, that's why there's a very, very small trumpet part in it, because it was the conductor was the trumpet player. and he conducted, and he made one of the Siegfried, not calls, but the theme in it. And so.
You mean like the horn call?
No, not the horn call, like just the trumpet.
Okay.
From Siegfried. No, the horn call from that, which is
some of my finest work.
Yes.
We'll talk about that, Wagner's brass music, but go ahead.
Now, and between those two, and of course the Wesendonck-Lieder, he used also to do as preparation for Tristan and Isolde. So they're very important works. They're intimate, but very important, and they lead up to big operas as well. Yeah. Staying in the world of opera, staying in Germanic opera, I wanted to add to this program one of my favorite piece and Merwin's favorite piece, and a lot of our favorite piece is Rosenkavalier, right? So after Strauss wrote those shocking operas like Salome, Elektra,
Don't spoil my quiz.
Oh, sorry. He finally went back to later in his life because his idol was Mozart, right? But he went back to it's not a pastiche, it's a tribute, I think, to those days of old. And at the same time, you can hear the end of an era. And I think Merwin mentioned that in the last week. It's the end of an era. You can hear that. So it goes from Wagner, who stretched the harmony, the concept of harmony, said that the most, the concept of instrumentation in his most intimate part. And then Strauss with the Rosenkavalier, which is That's why it's called Passion and Intrigue, right? The passion is on the Strauss side, intrigue because of opera. There's so much intrigue in it, but the valse suite. Well, it's the suite from the Rosenkavalier, and the valse part in it is very important because it's a tribute. It's like the end of the valse era, and that brings us to we wanted to each concert. This year we have a composer, BIPOC composer. And it's very important for us to underline diversity in our programming. So there's a wonderful Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, English black composer, who wrote a set of characteristic valses. So we're going to, after the Strauss valses, we're going to go into his valses. And it's interesting because the first one I programmed was the valse of the Queen. So in the Strauss, in the Rosenkavalier, it's set a lot of it in nobility in big brackets, nobility, if you know the opera especially. And so this is like the middle of our program, and the bookends are the Wagner. So that's how the program is built.
It's so interesting, and I see this all the time in almost every concert. There's such a sense of thoughtfulness, but originality that goes hand in hand with each of these concerts. I mean, most programmers would be happy enough to say, "Hey, we got a Richard and Richard show here, Strauss and Wagner, and it's going to be a big epic afternoon. Come see us." But you've also thrown in Samuel Coleridge-Taylor into the mix as well, which I think is really interesting. A really interesting approach. Let's tell the story of the Wesendonck-Lieder or the Wesendonck songs. I mean, they're named for Mathilde Wesendonck. You talked a little bit about, Wagner had the affair, blah, blah, blah. But these are based on, like, the letters, or how do these come about?
I think that the song came about. Of course, there's always at some point a quote-unquote commission, right? Because especially Wagner, right? He lived, he would go around and you have to give me some money to write this. And Wagner is quite well known in history. It's a known fact for not being the nicest of guys, right? Yeah. And it's kind of which is something that today would be impossible. It's like, don't judge the person, judge the work or something like that. Right. And for me personally, I mean, we play music, of course. There's some great music in there. But it's kind of a little difficult. I am tormented sometimes when I program his music because I'm conducting this. I'm not tormented about the Siegfried Idyll because it's very personal. It's their life. It's something, I mean, it doesn't matter. Sometimes, beginning of relationships can be messy. So it was messy with, this started with his wife because she was with somebody else at the beginning, which we do not recommend. And the Toledo Symphony does not approve. Yeah.
don't condone his behavior, but you do condone the music.
We do actually. No, I do. It's just me. But sometimes it's messy, and then but there's lots of love in the Siegfried Idyll, birth of a child, and how much love he has for Cosima, respect for her, and all that. But at the same time, we go into Wesendonck-Lieder, and there's this series of letters that they have between each other, and it's kind of again the same thing. Wagner goes somewhere. It's kind of he goes somewhere. He sees something he wants. He just goes for it. It doesn't care about whatever is around him. That's the part that I don't enjoy about the person. But those incredible works of art came from it. So it's kind of I'm always ambivalent about that. But the Wesendonck-Lieder, what's amazing about it is that the inspiration behind it, because Wagner, yes, the inspiration, but he was always somewhere else in his mind. He was in the next thing. So he was already thinking of Tristan and Isolde. Yeah. So maybe, a lot of people, they thrive on conflict or they thrive on chaos, especially a romantic era. But we all know people like that, right? I mean, they do exist. You say, why does it have to be so complicated? Why do we have to fight? And there are people like that, right? So Wagner he needed to create this chaos to be the master of that domain. Yeah? And at the end, there would be a work of art, incredible, that would come out of that. And the Wesendonck-Lieder are not a minor work. It's a major work. And the first time I conducted them, and I told you that before, was with Ben Heppner, the wonderful Helden tenor. And I learned so much. That's the thing, when you're a conductor, you learn so much from the people you work with, And for me, I learned what it was to sing in German. So basically, the left side of my suit was wet completely from the spit. But at the same time, that's the projection. And also to do it with somebody who's done Tristan so many times, and he was like a master of that. I kind of got the depth of it, and I was like, wow. Thank you very much for the master class, Ben.
Well, you're bringing back some memories for me of my early singing days. When I was still in college, I did some Strauss operas with Seiji Ozawa. And I did the recording of one of the Electra with, it was Christa Ludwig was the Clytemnestra.
Wow.
Hildegard Behrens was Electra. I mean, it was just a huge all-star cast. I remember sitting at Carnegie Hall backstage with James King, speaking of Helen tenors, and him asking me for vitamin C drops because his throat was kind of scratchy. And so, I was back there feeding him stuff. I sang the Junger Diener, right? You blink your ears, you'll miss it. But it's a really high part and a lot of stuff to it. And I do remember in rehearsals, Ozawa would point at Hildegard Behrens and then point at me and you say, like, how's his German? And she'd be like, it's okay. And that was the extent of, like, my German training there. Except for one time when we were making the recording, the producer yelled out over the microphone, tell the tenor the word is felt, right? Evidently, I was saying the word field incorrectly. So I had to do that 5 times. But,
it's more heartfelt that way.
Yeah. But the opportunity to watch people like Hildegard Behrens or Christa Ludwig especially sing these roles. I mean, it was just so fantastic. Anyway, enough about me. No, what do you have to say about me?
No, but Christa Ludwig is one of the best examples of it. Such a professional. Inspiration meets hard work.
Yeah,
it's like all the best people, they work like they have no talent, but they have all the talent in the world.
She was legendary.
She sang a little Mahler.
Yeah, I knew that Mahler was going to come into this. And actually, if you look right here on my script, Zach, I wrote the word Mahler.
Oh.
Well, let me take that segue into a totally different direction. Not about Mahler, but there's something about this program that I love, and it's the fact that the Wessin Dank is to Wagner as the 4 last songs for me are to Strauss. It's these 2 wonderful song cycles by composers who really knew how to set the orchestra in a very romantic case. And for Wagner, it's songs of love. For Strauss, it was songs of farewell. But they're just beautifully done. So I always put those 2 in the same little set of my Venn diagram of music. And this is a piece, the leader that I've always wanted to see performed here. But we finally found the right time to do it.
Wonderful. Very good. I do have a quiz. I want to get into the first part of this quiz, and then I want to talk about some of this great brass music, and especially the French horn music, maybe the trombone music of Wagner. And since we have 2 luminaries of their respective instruments here in the studio with us.
I'm going to need to keep that soundbite for myself.
Anyway, let me pull up some music. Now, I thought about, for the quiz, which is entitled Richard, or it could be Richard or Richard, right, if you want to get all Germany about it.
Are we getting Richard Rogers on this?
Yes, Richard Rogers. That was on one of the quiz questions quite a while ago. But I was thinking of what quiz music would work, and I didn't want to favor one over the other, so not Strauss, not Wagner, so I went with Johann Strauss. I figured that was a nice kind of little compromise, so we'll bring that up. So you have to walk a tightrope and answer the quiz questions at the same time. All right. I'm going to give you a clue, and you tell me if it's Richard or if it's Richard.
Are we writing our answers? Or
yeah, we're writing your answers.
Okay.
And don't blurt it out.
Okay.
So it's RW for Richard Wagner or RS for Richard Strauss, right? In my best classical music announcery voice. Okay. This person wrote their first play at the age of 13 and started music lessons so they could learn how to write music for the play. Was that Strauss or Wagner? Give you 2 more clues here. His first complete opera was never performed in his lifetime. Was that Strauss or Wagner? And finally, his art was heavily influenced by his father. Was that Richard Strauss or Richard Wagner? Okay, so we'll come back and check on those answers a little bit later. Okay, bring down the quiz music. Very good. So let's talk about some of the music itself, right? Richard Strauss obviously sort of follows from Wagner, Wagner was a big influence on Strauss when he was young, although Strauss's father forbade him to, to go that route early on. And it's a really weird story because Strauss's father, Franz, was a famous horn player in Bavaria. He actually played in the premiere of it was Wagner's, was it Tristan or one of the other operas that premiered there. And he hated Wagner's music, right?
Well, he especially hated the conductor who was doing Wagner's music. He was principal owner of the Munich Orchestra.
Yeah.
And von Bülow and Strauss it's notable in the history of music how much they hated each other. And von Bülow was the conductor who pushed all Wagner's music. Well, before Wagner, even after Wagner left with his wife. But anyway, that's something else.
But you have a much better relationship with your horn players.
Oh,
right?
yes, absolutely.
So there's a lot to be said there, but it also, it just brings up the fact that Richard Strauss was very much influenced by the sound of the horn. His father was a famous French horn player. Strauss wrote 2 concertos for that instrument.
You weren't giving away the answer to the previous
question.
question.
Yes, I was.
Okay, very good.
But we're gonna get to that at the end. We'll see if you don't get that one right, then you're in trouble. And of course, Wagner, with his leitmotifs and his themes that everybody uses in movie scores nowadays, he really used the horn to great heroic effect. So what is it about the horn that describes these kinds of feelings and emotions?
I think the horn is the greatest instrument in the orchestra. I mean, it's so
spoken like a true hornist.
It's so versatile. That it's in a woodwind quintet and a brass quintet. It has so many different timbres, and players can actually do so much with the instrument, either by slightly adjusting their hand position or even adjusting the way that their throat is opened or closed when they play. It's a chameleon almost. Sometimes it doubles the cello, and it sounds like one instrument. And it's Strauss and John Williams are why horn players play the horn.
Strauss and John Williams. Forget Wagner.
Der Rosenkavalier is actually the first Strauss piece that I was ever introduced to in my private lessons as a young horn player. I'd never heard of Strauss, and my horn teacher, I think I somewhere still have the part that he gave me to the opening of the suite. So,
well, there's a lot of Strauss, but also Wagner was out there inventing his own brass instruments because he wanted bigger and broader and deeper and louder. You want to talk a little bit, Alain, about your experience with Wagner as a world famous trombonist?
Actually, what you were talking about, the inventing instruments, that you wanted to have that sound that was dark and conical, not too cylindrical like trumpets and trombones, but this conical sound that would go, it's like the sound of a tuba, but getting higher, and something that's between the horns and the tuba. So it didn't exist. So finally they just made a Wagnerian tuba, a tuban, a Wagnerian tuban. And actually we have a very nice set of Wagnerian tuba at the orchestra. It's amazing. And of course Bruckner used it after that. And it's you even have some in the Rite of Spring. People don't really know that, but there's 2 tubans in the
and
Rite of
Strauss
Spring
too.
Yeah,
Alpine Symphony.
Yeah.
So, I almost made it my whole career without playing the Wagner tuba, and then we did a concert on the Esplanade in Boston, and I just couldn't escape it any longer, so I finally had to buckle down.
It's hard for tuning, that thing.
Well, also because the instruments, I mean, there can be some really bad Wagner tubas in the world, and so they are a little finicky.
How about Wagner tubists?
Well, I mean... if you find a good horn player, you can find a good Wagner tuba player.
Now, not to pit the trombone against the French horn here, but
we do it all the time. We do it all the time.
Yeah, like those Who Would Win books.
I'm
right?
divorced from one, so.
So now, who would you choose, Wagner or Strauss, if you only had one composer?
Mahler?
To finish out. I know who Zach would choose.
I think I would choose Strauss because there's just more in that catalog.
There's variety.
Speaking as a French hornist,
yeah. I mean, there's meat and potatoes in Wagner, but once the opera's done,
You can move on.
You can move on.
Elaine, speaking as a trombonist, only a trombonist, not a
only a
conductor,
trombonist.
not a composer, not
Yeah.
a musician. Well, I guess a trombonist is a musician, but as a,
Sometimes. On
I'm not
occasion.
sure about that, actually.
speaking as a trombonist, Strauss or Wagner?
Oh, that's a good question.
And don't say Richard.
The thing about Strauss is that it has so much variety. It's not only opera, symphonic poems, it's wonderful and tone poems that he wrote. But the trombone parts on the Wagner are pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I have to say,
Yeah.
they're very, very spectacular. Trombone parts in Strauss. If I'm just talking as a trombone player, the operas are wonderful. The tone poems, it's okay, but we don't have so much to play compared to the horns. But I have to say, the horn is also my favorite instrument. So even if I play the trombone,
Oh.
I win.
I know what I mean. Often I get that comment that the trombone when I play it sounds a bit more like a horn than a trombone. It's because that's the sound that's stuck in my ear, So no, but really, you play the instrument like what you hear. So for me, and I discovered I had pretty good horn chops, but I was too late. I already had a trombone career going, so I just kept going.
Yeah. Well, two things come
You
to
had
mind.
the arm for the trombone, not for the...
For the slide, yeah. So you want to make sure that none of the TSO horn players hear what you just said, right?
I'm pretty sure
'Cause you
they
said
heard
they're-
heard us say the horn is the best instrument and Elaine's favorite instrument is the horn.
They know. They
We
know.
would be
Exactly.
happy for them
They
to
know.
know that.
Well, you
They
can't play
know.
favorites, so.
They rarely get the hand. It's fine.
Well, see, and then this relates to that famous Strauss quote, "Don't encourage the
Yeah.
brass," right?
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe
Don't
we
look
should-
at the brass.
Don't look
It
at
only
Don't look at the
encourages-
brass.
And it's actually don't look at the trombones. It's not the brass. It says don't look at the trombones. It only encourages them.
Yeah, then you can give a little side eye to the horn players, maybe see what happens out of that. I want to jump into a couple more quiz questions here. Let me pull up the Springtime Waltz. This is a drinking song, basically. If you move your mug back and forth,
That was
you'll-
last week.
You'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, this composer, Strauss or Wagner, Richard or Richard, he took musical advice. He took musical advice from his dog. Okay. He was a college dropout. One of his operas caused a public scandal and was banned in many cities, including Chicago and New York, which had the effect of making it extremely popular because everybody had to go see this banned opera, right? So 3 different questions, 3 different answers, RW or RS.
Wait, there was 3 questions?
Yeah, it's
Oops.
not all about one composer.
Oh,
I mean, it could be,
I need a
but
redo.
it's
I'm
three
sorry, I
three
have-
different questions. You
Okay.
lost already.
No, I have 2. Wait, what was the third?
what
Sorry.
was the middle one?
He was a college dropout.
Okay, sorry. You
Oh,
have to
okay.
go
Yeah,
down.
Gotcha.
So that's
Okay.
either
I thought
Richard
that
or
was an
Richard.
additional question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Or
thought
additional
it was more
clarification.
clues.
Yeah, because the first one were clues, right?
I like how we're
Yeah,
trying
these
to
are all clues, and you
debate
decide
with
the
the
composer.
the teacher for extra credit.
I've done 5 so far. 5
Oh my
questions.
God.
Five?
Okay,
Wait,
I
no.
only have
seriously?
4.
All 3
Yeah.
of us.
I'm at 3.
No,
No.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, Brad.
Quiz
let's
fail.
go back.
Oh no. We'll just
See, I
keep
told
going.
you this was confusing.
Just,
Okay,
just give us a number going
the
forward.
quiz is Richard or Richard.
Okay.
Oh,
The
okay.
first and each one of these clues is answered by a different composer.
Uh-huh.
It could be
Mhm.
RS or RW. So
Everything you say is a question, right?
yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Go.
He wrote his first play at age 13 and started music lessons to learn how to write for it.
Okay.
Okay, that's clue
That's
1.
That's
Okay,
clue 1.
Okay.
Clue 2 is he completed his first opera, but it was never performed in his lifetime. Obviously, he completed his first opera. His first complete opera was never performed in his lifetime. Okay?
Okay.
For some reason, I have the Goonies written down here. I don't know what that is. Okay. His art was heavily influenced by his father. That's clue number 3.
Okay.
Number 4 is he took musical advice from his dog, RS or RW. He was a college dropout, again, RS or RW.
Okay.
And one of his operas caused a public scandal, blah, blah, blah.
Got it.
Became extremely popular.
Okay. Got it.
All right.
And just so you know, there are 4 more questions, all
Okay,
right?
good.
Oh, jeez.
But before we get to that, let's turn it over to Zach for a second because my ears perked up and my eyes perked up when I saw Samuel Coleridge-Taylor on this program because there was a composer that in his day was viewed as sort of a successor to Mahler, Gustav Mahler, and your favorite composer, Zach, right? I'm sure that you answered Mahler to several of these quiz questions already.
Yeah, actually, I've crossed a lot of the Mahlers out. Once you told me it was Ricard versus Ricard, I'm like, where's Gustav?
Yes, exactly. Where's Gustav? That'll be like the title of your autobiography. So, Zach, take it away.
What's the question?
There's no question. You're just taking it away. Like Calgon. I'm going to call you Calgon now. I know Elaine has to go. So, all of that aside, what for you is the connection here between Mahler and what we're talking about?
Pass. So between Mahler and Wagner and Strauss, these are late Romantic composers who are very much exploring the outer limits of what an orchestra can accomplish. So we talked a little bit about how Wagner was making different instruments. We talked about how Mahler kept growing the size of the orchestra, and Strauss was carrying that tradition later into history as, Stravinsky was already a kind of, an old timer by the time we were hearing the four last songs by Strauss. So, they each kind of did something in an excessive way that made their music so purely late Romantic and so purely them. And I think if you like one composer, you usually like the others, and that actually is an interesting segue into one of the reasons that we're very excited for this weekend. We're celebrating as a memorial tribute to the Arness family. I remember having a lunch with Dick Arness, where we talked about how much he liked Wagner and how much he didn't like Mahler. So I felt very much on
you were
the
simpatico there.
Well, I was on the backs of my feet there because I needed to understand how you could be so excited about one but not the other. And in talking to his son Rick over the last several years, we've found at least one Arness who's interested in Mahler now. So I claim that as a victory. But the conversation I remember having with Dick about Wagner was so heartfelt, and when he passed, we knew that we wanted to do something to acknowledge all the generosity that they've given to the orchestra over the years. So we originally were going to do the Ring Without Words at the end of the 1920 season,
right,
and the pandemic got in the way. And then we talked about bringing the Passion and Intrigue concert into last season, the 2021 season, and the pandemic again got in the way. And here we are for the third time, and very excited to present it. But the Siegfried Idyll was really the piece of memorial that we had conceived, and it's a very beautiful and very sincere work by Wagner. And I think that you can think about Wagner as a brassy, flashy composer, but this is, a really great example of him as his most sincere, and that's how we like to pay tribute.
Well, we haven't mentioned this yet, but the concert is happening this weekend, Friday and Saturday, October 15th and 16th. It's at 8 o'clock p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art Paris Style. Passion and Intrigue is the name of it. Music of Richard Wagner, Richard Strauss, as well as Samuel Coleridge-Taylor. Elaine Trudell is conducting. And you can find more information at ToledoSymphony.com or call up that box office at 419-246-8000. Let's finish up our quiz and see how we did on this before we finish it up. Let me bring in some of the music here. Get out your beers. Okay. Where were we? All right.
7.
This composer was infamously associated with the Nazi Party. Was it Wagner or Strauss? He was fond of wearing heavy perfume, silk underwear, ruffled shirts, and women's jackets. Would that be Strauss or Wagner? He was an expert card player. Richard Strauss or Richard Wagner?
I have a story about that.
And finally, he died from a heart attack after fighting with his wife over another woman. Okay, so we got them all. Let's go back and do the rundown, see how we did, okay? So this is the honor system. Okay, he wrote his first play at age 13. Started music lessons to learn how to write music for it. That was Richard Wagner. His first complete opera was never performed in his lifetime. That was Richard Wagner, The Fairies. Or Die Feen was the opera. Richard Strauss wrote an opera called Guntram, but it did get a few performances while he was alive. His art was heavily influenced by his father. Well, of course, that was Richard Strauss. Richard Wagner's father died 6 months after he was born, but he did have a stepfather who was an artist and a playwright, Ludwig Geyer. Definitely had an influence on him. There's a whole, another story we can dive into there. He took musical advice from his dog. Well, that would be Richard Wagner, although it might be apocryphal. There's a story, we know he was a dog lover. There's a story that he used to play through chords at his piano, and if he hit one that the dog reacted to, he would write it down. Right? I don't know if that's true or not.
That explains a lot, actually.
Is that how we got the Tristan chord?
Yeah, exactly.
Fido was hungry.
All dogs howl to Ride of the Valkyries.
It's sort of like when Bernstein did Omnibus and he had all the different versions of the opening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Right? It was like that with Wagner and the
radio,
dog.
Didn't you?
Beethoven needed a dog, right? Would have saved a lot of time. Okay. He was a college dropout. Well, that was actually Richard Strauss.
Wow.
Dropped out of the University of Munich after 1 year. Went to Berlin to make his musical fortune. Richard Wagner didn't drop out of college. He dropped out of what would have been his high school. But he ended up enrolling at the University of Leipzig. And I don't know if he got a degree, but he didn't drop out.
Shady.
Yeah. One of this person's operas caused a public scandal, was banned in many cities, including Chicago, New York. That was Salome by
Strauss.
By Richard Strauss. This composer was infamously associated with the Nazi Party. I guess it's infamously. Yeah, Richard Strauss was president of the music propaganda wing of the Nazi Party in the early 1930s. But of course, Wagner is also, associated by proxy with the party.
The greatest composer from Hitler's perspective.
Yeah. Right. So that's a whole can of worms.
So that's a trick question. Is it both, or do we get?
Strauss.
It's Richard Strauss because Wagner was only peripherally associated by way of his music.
He gets a way worse rap for that than
He
Strauss
does, yes.
Yeah. Well, Wagner had plenty of things to get a bad rap. And Elaine talked about that a little bit. That's a big, complicated subject that everybody has their own individual.
I need the waltz. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Their individual thoughts over. Okay, he was fond of wearing heavy perfume, silk underwear, ruffled shirts, and women's jackets. That was Richard Wagner. You see pictures of him wearing that stuff. This composer was an expert card player.
Strauss.
That was Richard Strauss, an expert at playing a card game called Skat. S-K-A-T. Finally, he died from a heart attack after fighting with his wife over one of the flower maidens in Parsifal. That was Richard Wagner, of course. We don't know for sure if that's exactly, what caused his heart attack, but that's the story.
I didn't do too
So
bad.
how'd we do? What'd you get, Vanessa? How
I
many?
got a 70 percentile.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, I got 7 out of 10.
Oh, okay. I was going to pull out my slide rule here and figure it out. What do you got, Elaine?
9.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And what do you have?
I'm the caboose. I have 6 out of 10, 60th percentile, another F.
So 90th percentile goes to Elaine.
Well, Merwin would have probably gotten 10. So.
Well, you were picking up the pace for you and Merwin. So
what's it called when you round up? Because the curve.
The curve.
Well,
grading on a curve.
Those are different things, but okay, I see where you're going with this. One is a distribution of statistics. The other is a manipulation of maths.
Yeah, that.
Yes.
Well, I do want to mention the concert again is happening this weekend, Friday and Saturday at 8 o'clock p.m. at the Toledo Museum of Art, Paris-style Passion and Intrigue. Strauss is Passion, Intrigue is Wagner, right? I'm not sure what Samuel Coleridge-Taylor is, but he's on the program as well. He's in the middle of this tumultuous program. A lot of great music to be heard. You can find out all about it at ToledoSymphony.com or call the box office at 419-246-8000. I want to thank everybody for coming in today and talking about stuff that I mean, there's so many different things to talk about, but I think we touched on a few things in order to help people understand how these two composers can fit on the same stage together at the same time, right? This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes of our program as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple and Google Podcasts. Don't forget, you can check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find the TSO streaming platform online at stream.artstoledo.com. My thanks to Zach Vassar, Elaine Trudell, and Vanessa Gardner. I'm Brad Cresswell, and this has been Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.